إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا وسيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد. So from today then, from now, we're going to do the course for Ramadan, the Ramadan classes for the next few weeks leading up to Ramadan itself. And this year we're going to be doing Umdatul Ahkaam, the explanation taken from Fath al-Bari, which is the explanation of Sahih al-Bukhari, the explanation of Al-Hafiz ibn Hajr al-Asqalani. So that is what we plan to do here in Liverpool for the next few weeks on Saturdays. So, Kitab al-Siyam, Al-Hafiz ibn Hajr rahimahullah says, As-Sawmu was-Siyamu fil-Lughah al-Imsak. That the word Sawm and Siyam linguistically in the Arabic language, it means al-imsak, to hold back. To hold back. That is what the word as-sawm or as-siyam, the Arabic words for fasting, that is what they mean linguistically, al-imsak, to hold back. وفي الشرع, and Islamically speaking, the word as-sawm and as-siyam, إمساك مخصوص في زمن مخصوص عن شيء مخصوص بشرائط مخصوصة. That it is a very specific type of holding back in a specified time from specified things with specified conditions. Islamically speaking, fasting is a specific type of holding back in a specified time zone from specified things with specified conditions. Of course, the whole point of our classes over the next few weeks is going to be to explain what all of these specifics are, what the specified time is, what this specified type of holding back is, what are the things that you have to hold back from, and what are those specified conditions to make your fasting proper and valid in the Islamic manner of fasting. He also quotes some of the other scholars and what they have said. So some of their quotes are, الصوم ترك الطعام والشراب والنكاح والكلام يقال صام صوما وصياما ورجل صائم وصوم. So fasting is to leave food and drink and intimacy, the intercourse, and speech. It can linguistically means to leave off speech. Like in the Quran it mentions about Maryam alayhi salam saying that I vow fasting. And the meaning of her saying she vows fasting is that she will not speak. So here he mentions that too. Another one of the scholars mentions الصوم في الأصل الإمساك عن الفعل Fasting in its origin, in default, is to hold back from doing something. وَلِذَلِكَ قِيلَ لِلْفَرَسِ الْمُمْسِكِ عَنِ السَّيْرِ صَائِمٌ. That's why linguistically, a horse that refuses to move is known as fasting. The horse is fasting. Fasting, i.e. holding back from moving. He's holding back from moving, refusing to move. So linguistically in Arabic, he is fasting. It can be used like that linguistically, because linguistically, siyam is to hold back from doing something, to restrict yourself from doing something. So the horse that stops itself from going, from moving, from running, prevents itself, restricts itself, holds itself back from doing so, is therefore linguistically, in the Arabic language, fasting. Not Islamically, because that needs all those specified conditions, but just linguistically. And Islamically, another definition given here, imsakul mukallaf, that it is a person who is mukallaf that holds back. Mukallaf meaning that he's Muslim, he's of an adult age, beyond puberty, etc. The one who the fasting is applicable to. That person holds back bin niyyah, with an intention عن تناول المطعم والمشرب والاستمناء والاستقاء من الفجر إلى المغرب. That the person with intention holds back from food or drink or the release of seminal fluid or vomit, etc. from Fajr to Maghrib. And Allah said in the Quran, يا أيها الذين آمنوا كتب عليكم الصيام كما كتب على الذين من قبلكم لعلكم تتقون. That O you who believe, fasting has been prescribed upon you just as it was prescribed upon those who came before you, so that you may achieve piety. This ayah is an evidence from the Quran upon the obligation of fasting. The ayah also tells us that fasting is not something which was a legislation for this ummah only. Fasting is something which has been around from before this ummah, the previous prophets and messengers too, because the ayah says, كَمَا كُتِبَ عَلَى الَّذِينَ مِنْ قَبْلِكُمْ. Just as fasting was prescribed upon those who came before you. And then also, the ayah gives us the reasoning behind this fasting. And that is so that we achieve taqwa. That we achieve that taqwa, the fulfillment of our obligations to Allah, and staying away from the haram, that we nurture ourselves upon that way. We achieve that taqwa through fasting for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then he mentions قوله والذين فاختلف في التشبيه الذي دلت عليه الكاف، هل هو على الحقيقة فيكون صيام رمضان قد كتب على الذين من قبلنا، أو المراد مطلق الصيام دون وقته وقدره. So now we've just mentioned that the ayah highlights that fasting was something which was around. It was legislated even before this ummah. Does that mean though it was legislated upon the previous nations in history before Muhammad ﷺ, before this ummah, the other prophets and messengers? Was it legislated upon them in the same way as what we have now? The fasting and the rules of fasting that we have right now, was it that exact same fasting upon the other nations before us? Or does it simply mean that there was just some type of fasting upon the nations before us, not necessarily exactly the way we have it now in this Sharia? Ibn Hajr says, there are two statements of the scholars regarding that. Al-Awlul Awwal, the first statement, ورد في أول حديث مرفوع عن عمر أورده ابن أبي حاتم بإسناد فيه مجهول ولفظه صيام رمضان كتبه الله على الأمم قبلكم. There is a hadith he mentions which is supposed to be marfu' to the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam, narrated by Umar ibn al-Khattab radiyallahu anhu, even though the chain of narration does have a majhul in it, an unknown narrator, which would make the narration in of itself weak, not acceptable. But what does the narration say anyway? صيام رمضان كتبه الله على الأمم قبلكم. The fasting of Ramadan, Allah prescribed it upon the nations before us. There is another narration or other supporting evidences to back this up, even though we said this narration has an unknown narrator in the chain, making it unacceptable, but there are other narrations that support this same meaning. That yes, Allah did prescribe the fasting of Ramadan upon other nations that came before us. And that's why some scholars took that opinion, like Al-Hasan al-Basri. The second opinion, أن التشبيه واقع على نفس الصوم وهو قول الجمهور. The second opinion is that it is about fasting overall, the concept of fasting. And that is what the majority of the scholars have said. That it wasn't about Ramadan like we know it, but it was the concept of fasting that was legislated from the time of Nuh alayhi salam. The concept of fasting was legislated from the time of Nuh alayhi salam. And then, like we said, لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ, the purpose and the objective behind fasting, so that you may achieve this taqwa. إشارة إلى أن من قبلنا كان فرض الصوم عليهم من قبيل الآثار والأثقال التي كلفوا بها، وأما هذه الأمة فتكليفها بالصوم ليكون سببا لاتقاء المعاصي وحائلا بينهم وبينها، فعلى هذا المفعول المحذوف يقدر بالمعاصي أو المنهيات. So here he mentions that this fasting you achieve by taqwa. For this ummah, it is an aid. The fasting is an aid, something that helps in protecting you from the sinning and becomes an obstacle between you and sinning, so you achieve taqwa, that you may become more as a person of taqwa through fasting. There are some scholars who say that fasting is at the pinnacle of the acts of worship. And they have some narrations, for example, عَلَيْكَ بِالصَّوْمِ فَإِنَّهُ لَا مِثْلَ لَهُ. Upon you is to fast because it has no equal. That act of worship has no equal to it. So some scholars put the worship of fasting right at the top. Majority of the scholars, though, they say, of course, that the second pillar of Islam, prayer, is superior overall as an act of worship above others. So that is a brief introduction into the chapter of fasting. We now start with the first hadith in this particular chapter, and that is the hadith of Abu Hurairah radiyallahu anhu قال قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم لا تقدموا رمضان بصوم يوم أو يومين إلا رجلا كان يصوم صوما فليصمه. In this narration, which is in Bukhari and Muslim, and that is something we should have noted, Umdatul Ahkaam is basically hadith from Bukhari and Muslim. Umdatul Ahkaam, this book we're going through now, the ahadith are basically all Bukhari and Muslim. So this first hadith, it's in Bukhari and it's in Muslim, where the Prophet ﷺ said, do not precede Ramadan by fasting a day or two in advance. Don't precede actual Ramadan with an extra couple of days added on leading into it. Except for someone who typically fasts on that schedule, then he can continue. For example, if Ramadan fell on a Tuesday, then it's not permissible for someone to say, okay, Ramadan, Tuesday now, let me just start with the fasting on Monday, beginning of the week, extra day, extra reward, I lead into Ramadan with the extra day. Not allowed. Except if you are somebody who has a habit of fasting Mondays, then your intention is to carry out your normal habit. It's not to do with Ramadan. Even if Ramadan wasn't there on Tuesday, you would have been fasting Monday. So, إِلَّا رَجُلٌ يَصُومُ صَوْمًا فَلْيَصُمْ. Except a person who typically fasts on a particular schedule, like Mondays, like Thursdays, then regardless of where Ramadan is coming in, you can carry on your schedule. But if you don't have anything like that, and it becomes established that Ramadan is on a Tuesday, like on a Sunday night, they look for the moon, it's not seen anywhere, so the next day is still going to be Sha'ban, so you now know Ramadan is going to start on Tuesday, for example. You can't say now, well, okay, it's Tuesday, but let's just start from tomorrow. Let's do an extra day. We know Ramadan's Tuesday, but an extra day tomorrow. Let's begin. It's Barakah now, Ramadan coming. Let's just begin tomorrow. Hadith says no. You cannot add on extra days onto Ramadan, leading onto Ramadan, unless it was your habit and schedule upon those days. So, لا تقدموا رمضان بصوم يوم أو يومين. Do not precede Ramadan by fasting a day or two leading into it. And in the version of Bukhari, لا يتقدمن أحدكم رمضان بصوم. None of you should precede Ramadan with fasting. وفي رواية خالد بن الحارث عن هشام عن يحيى عن أبي سلمة عن أبي هريرة عند الإسماعيلي لا تقدموا بين يدي رمضان بصوم. Do not precede leading into Ramadan with extra days of fasting. And in the Musnad of Imam Ahmad, لا تقدموا قبل رمضان بصوم. Do not proceed before Ramadan with fasting. And At-Tirmidhi mentions in his version, لا تقدموا شهر رمضان بصيام قبله. Do not precede the fasting of Ramadan with fasting before it. قال البخاري, الإمام البخاري said, باب هل يقال رمضان أو شهر رمضان ومن رأى كله واسعا. وقال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم من صام رمضان وقال لا تقدموا رمضان. وقوله من رأى كله واسعا أي جائزا بالإضافة بغير الإضافة وللكشمهين ومن رآه بزيادة الضمير. These are extras regarding Ramadan. Is it just known as Ramadan, or are you supposed to say the month of Ramadan? That's just an additional detail which is sometimes mentioned in some of the points. But Al-Imam al-Bukhari then mentions لا تقولوا رمضان فإن رمضان اسم من أسماء الله ولكن قولوا شهر رمضان. There is a narration which Al-Imam al-Bukhari mentioned as weak, that don't say just Ramadan, say the month of Ramadan, because just Ramadan is a name of Allah. Don't say just Ramadan, say the month of Ramadan, because just Ramadan is one of the names of Allah. But that narration, as we said, is weak. So be alert with these affairs. And then Al-Hafidh ibn Hajr, he goes into some details regarding the name of the month of Ramadan. And you should get used to this type of thing now. This is a completely different style of explanation to what we've been doing with, for example, Shaykh Al-Fawzan, Shaykh Al-Uthaymeen, those types of explanations we've been doing on the other books. Al-Hafidh ibn Hajr, there will be lots of additional points, lots of additional issues that come into the explanations. And that is the way of the scholars of old. You'll see that they mention various points that are connected to a hadith in the chain of narration, in the wordings of the hadith, etc. So now he's gone on to this side topic, which isn't directly the meaning of the hadith or the point, but the side topic of the name Ramadan. Do you say Ramadan, or are we supposed to say the month of Ramadan? He's mentioned now there's a hadith some people may use, the hadith that says don't say Ramadan, Ramadan is the name of Allah, say the month of Ramadan. However, he indicates that this is a weak narration. Then he says that one of the other scholars of the past, Al-Imam Al-Bayhaqi, قد روي عن أبي معشر عن محمد بن كعب وهو أشبه وروي عن مجاهد والحسن من طريقين ضعيفين وقد احتج البخاري لجواز ذلك بعدة أحاديث. He says again, there are other weak chains of narration saying don't say just Ramadan, it's a name of Allah, say the month of Ramadan. He says there are other weak narrations, and therefore Al-Imam Al-Bukhari has come to the conclusion upon the permissibility of saying just Ramadan. وقد ترجم النسائي لذلك أيضا فقال باب الرخصة في أن يقال لشهر رمضان رمضان. Al-Imam al-Nasa'i similarly has a chapter which states the permissibility of saying just Ramadan as opposed to having to say the month of Ramadan. And then he mentions the hadith of Abu Bakr, لا يقولن أحدكم صمت رمضان ولا قمته كله. وحديث ابن عباس عمره في رمضان تعدل حجة. He mentions two narrations here, and in these two narrations the companions are referring to Ramadan as just Ramadan. So for example, Abu Bakr says, none of you should say I fasted Ramadan. He doesn't say I fasted the month of Ramadan, uses the term just Ramadan. Ibn Abbas, he mentions in that narration also Umrah in Ramadan. is equal to the reward of Hajj. Again, doesn't say Umrah in the month of Ramadan. So there are evidences indicating it is permissible to call it just Ramadan. And you don't have to say the month of Ramadan. It is not correct to say that Ramadan is one of the names of Allah. وقد يتمسك للتقييد بالشهر بورود القرآن. However, some scholars may still have an issue with that, and one of the reasons is because of the ayah in the Quran. In the ayah in the Quran, it mentions it as Shahru Ramadan. Here in the ayah in Al-Baqarah, Shahru Ramadan, the month of Ramadan. And they say, as for the narrations, it's possible the narrators were just abbreviating, that it was actually the month of Ramadan, but in the chains, the narrators just abbreviated it to saying Ramadan, maybe. But the Quran, no possibility of abbreviations or anything missing. What's in the Quran is absolute. So they say the Quran says the month of Ramadan, and therefore we should stick to that and say every time when you're referring to it as the month of Ramadan and not just Ramadan. An opinion of the other scholars. But like we said, the narrations indicating it are weak. That's why, like we said, Al-Imam al-Bukhari indicated the permissibility of saying just Ramadan, even though Al-Hafidh ibn Hajr mentions Al-Imam al-Bukhari didn't say 100% you can say just Ramadan. But the way he explained it is that Al-Imam al-Bukhari is saying those narrations are weak and therefore indicating the permissibility of saying just Ramadan rather than saying it as an absolute definite. Because in the Quran it says Shahru Ramadan. وَنُقِلَ عَنْ أَصْحَابِ مَالِكَ الْكِرَاهِيَّةِ. The companions of Imam Malik, they did not like saying just Ramadan. وعن ابن الباقلاني منهم وكثير من الشافعية إن كان هناك قرينة تصرفه إلى شهر فلا يكره والجمهور على الجواز. The majority of the scholars, though, as we said in conclusion, say it is okay to say just Ramadan. Then he mentions, why is this month even called Ramadan? What does Ramadan mean? Why even the name Ramadan? What does Ramadan actually mean? So he says the scholars have differed over the meaning of the word Ramadan. Some of them say لأنه ترمض فيه الذنوب أي تحرق لأن الرمضاء شدة الحق. Some of the scholars have said that the meaning of Ramadan is along the lines of something fiery or something burning. And that is an indication that Ramadan is the month where the sins are burnt up. A person gains taqwa and the sins are burnt up. So some of them say it comes from the word Ramda, which means severe heat. Ramda, which means severe heat. And so it could be an indication Ramadan, the severity of the heat burns up the sins and gets rid of them. That is possibly one of the reasons why it is known as Ramadan. Other scholars, they say that actually it could be because the month of Ramadan, it occurred at the times of summer. Obviously here it changes because of the difference in the calendar and how the days always change. So we end up with Ramadan in summer, we end up with Ramadan in winter. But it mentions that at the time the way that the month of Ramadan fell, it fell in summer, and Ramadan means a lot of heat, and maybe that's why they know that month to be called the month of Ramadan, because it's the month that would fall during the summer. Al-Hafidh ibn Hajr also mentions that one of the scholars, Abu al-Khair al-Taliqani, mentioned in one of his books, Hada'ir al-Quds, that Ramadan has 60 different names. He mentions that one of the scholars said that. Then there is a narration that some of the Sufis mention, and it is not established, it is not authentic, but to be aware, in case they begin to quote these things in the month of Ramadan, there is a narration, they say that when Adam alayhi salam ate from the tree and then he repented, after he repented, his acceptance was delayed by 30 days. His acceptance of the repentance he made didn't occur for a period of 30 days. لما أكل من الشجرة ثم تاب تأخر قبول توبته مما بقي في جسده من تلك الأكلة 30 يوما. That when he ate from the tree and repented, it was 30 days after when the repentance finally fully accepted. And they say because once he ate that food, the remnants of that food and digested in his body was within him for 30 days until every aspect of that food completely washed away, gone from his body, took 30 days. So they say the acceptance of the tawbah took 30 days. فَلَمَّا صَفَى جَسَدُهُ, when his body completely whitewashed, got rid of all remnants of that food, مِنْهَا صَفَى جَسَدُهُ مِنْهَا تِيبَ عَلَيْهِ, then the tawbah was accepted from him. فَفُرِضَ عَلَى ذُرِّيَّةِ صِيَامْ 30 يَوْمًا, and that's where the concept, the legislation of fasting 30 days came from. That Adam alayhi salam ate from the tree, it then took 30 days for the remnants and the after effects of that food in his body to finally clear out, and then his tawbah was accepted. And they say that's where this idea or this legislation then came from initially, of fasting 30 days. That is, of course, not established or proven. That is a story sometimes you hear them saying, the Sufis, that it's Adam alayhi salam and 30 days of repentance for his food to come out, and that's why you fast 30 days, but it's not correct. So, the point that we began with on this narration was, before we digressed on to the topic of whether you can say Ramadan or the month of Ramadan, and before we spoke about the meaning of the word Ramadan, the first hadith was talking about the impermissibility of adding on extra days leading into Ramadan. Except رَجُلًا كَانَ يَصُومُ صَوْمًا فَلْيَصُمْ. Except a man who fasts typically on those days, regardless of Ramadan coming, then he can carry on upon his routine. The scholars, they said, the meaning of this prohibition, because what is the meaning of the prohibition? Why can't you add an extra couple of days on before Ramadan? They say the reason for it is لا تستقبل رمضان بصيام على نية الاحتياط لرمضان. Why do most people add on that extra day? Imagine now, for example, like we said, on a whatever day it might be, on a Sunday. It's the 29th of Sha'ban. They go and look for the moon, nothing is sighted, and therefore the decision is clear. Ramadan is going to be on not the next day, Monday, but the day after, Tuesday. So some people, they may say, well, let's just start tomorrow anyway. Just in case. Moon wasn't sighted tonight, so the announcements are going out. Obviously you finish 30 days in that case of Sha'ban, and then you begin the day after, which is now going to be Tuesday, for example. So they say, well, you know what, let's just start tomorrow. It's one day, we'll get reward for it anyway. Let's just begin tomorrow just in case. The hadith is telling you that's impermissible. It's impermissible for you to say, just in case, let's add on, let's just start tomorrow. The narrations clearly tell us, Sumu liru'yatihi. Fast when you see the new moon. It's linked to the moon. If the moon is not sighted on the 29th, then on the 30th there is no fasting. Don't say, well, just in case or whatever else. The Sharia tells us, moon is sighted, begin. It's not sighted, complete your 30 days and begin after that, the day after. So now if somebody says, well, let's be safe, you are essentially then going against what the Sunnah has told us. So here the hadith is telling us, no, do not add on an extra day or two leading into Ramadan as a type of precaution. You don't do that. قال الترمذي, الإمام الترمذي said, العمل على هذا عند أهل العلم كرهوا أن يتعجل الرجل بصيام قبل دخول رمضان لمعنى رمضان. That the scholars, this is what they are upon. They do not accept that a person begins his fasting in advance of Ramadan coming with the concept of precaution. With the concept of precaution, it could be Ramadan. No. The scholars said you don't do that. والحكمة فيه التقوي بالفطر لرمضان ليدخل فيه بقوة ونشاط. One of the wisdoms also is that when you actually begin the first day of Ramadan, that you've been allowed to eat the day before. You've been allowed to eat the day before, to drink the day before, to engage in the intercourse, etc. All of it allowed the day before Ramadan. So you are fresh to begin that next day. You've been allowed to eat and drink and everything else up until that first day. So you begin with energy and you are fresh to begin that first day, as opposed to somebody who's already done 2 days going on to that third day now. He won't have the same level of energy beginning that first day of the month of Ramadan. Even though مقتضى الحديث أنه لو تقدمه بصيام 3 أيام أو 4 جاز. What if somebody says the hadith mentions do not precede Ramadan by a day or two? So what if somebody precedes it by 3 days? That doesn't come into the hadith technically. Hadith says do not precede Ramadan by a day or two. What if somebody preceded it by 3 or 4? Which is therefore not technically in the boundaries of the hadith. That will come to in a moment, he says. وَقِيلَ, other scholars have said the reason why you don't precede Ramadan by extra fasting the day or two before is خَشْيَةَ اخْتِلَاطِ النَّفْلِ بِالْفَرْضِ. The fear that your supererogatory fasting, it becomes intertwined with your obligatory fasting. That it all becomes mixed up. A person is fasting the couple of days before, which is just nafil fasts then, and then he goes straight into the obligatory one. It's like an amalgamation of supererogatory and obligatory all flowing one into the other, which isn't correct. But again, that can be argued against, because a person who has the habit of fasting, for example, Mondays and Ramadan begins on Tuesday, is going to do exactly that. So these are just opinions and ideas the scholars have given as to why this may be the case. Others have said, because, as we mentioned just before, you would be criticizing and opposing the Sunnah if you didn't. Sunnah tells you clearly, if you see the moon, then fast. If you don't, then don't. So why are you fasting when it hasn't been seen? So it would be an opposition to the Sunnah to do so. The only other exceptions to this are things like making up days. Imagine a person has a couple of days left to make up from last Ramadan. And we know that you have to make up those days before the next Ramadan begins. And now all of a sudden, whatever's happened for whatever reason, there's barely a couple of days left before Ramadan's going to start. You got no choice. You're going to have to fast those couple of days to make sure you finish off making up the days of last year before next Ramadan starts. Otherwise you'll be a sinner. So that type of thing would be allowed. Also, if you'd made a vow, let's imagine somebody had made a vow that they were going to fast a day before Ramadan. And now there's only a day left. Hadith says don't proceed Ramadan. But you've made a vow that you were going to fast a day before this Ramadan comes. Now there's only one day left. You got no choice. You're going to have to fulfill your vow. So that is exceptions. He also mentions, Al-Hafidh ibn Hajr mentions that this act of adding on those extra day or two before Ramadan is a practice of the Rafidah. He says it is a practice of the Rafidah. فالحديث رد على من يرى تقديم الصوم على رؤية كالرافضة. Those who view the permissibility of fasting leading into Ramadan before the sighting has even happened, like the Rafidah, he says, they do that. So it's a refutation of them that we don't do that. وَرَدٌّ عَلَى مَنْ قَالَ بِجَوَازِ صَوْمِ النَّفْلِ الْمُطْلَقِ. And a refutation upon those who say, well, you can just fast a supererogatory day. Yes, you can, but the hadith is telling you before Ramadan, don't. So you don't go against the Sunnah. Some scholars have said the hadith, it only prohibits somebody fasting a day or two before Ramadan if their intention is precaution. So essentially, if a person has the intention of precaution, he's fasting that day beforehand with the intention of Ramadan. If he's fasting that day out of precaution, then his intention is that this day could be the first day of Ramadan. Some scholars say it's only prohibited if you have that type of intention, that you're doing it because of precaution, just in case. If you're doing it knowing it's got nothing to do with that, just feel like a supererogatory fast the day before Ramadan, you can. But Al-Hafidh ibn Hajr says that is a weak opinion, because the hadith and the context of the hadith does not limit it to that particular intention of precaution. It's an open type of prohibition. Do not lead into Ramadan with an extra day or two of fasting beforehand. And that makes it very clear then, the hadith where it mentions Sumu li ru'yatihi, fast when seeing the moon. Fast when seeing the moon. Sumu li ru'yatihi, فإن اللام فيه للتأقيت لا للتعليل. That the hadith here where it says fast when you see it, it is therefore determining a time period for you. And that time period is from the moment the moon is sighted. Then from the very next day, your fasting begins. So the hadith has restricted a time zone for us clearly. When you sight the moon, begin. If you don't sight the moon, as we know the narration say, finish off 30 days of Sha'ban and then begin after that. The majority of the scholars, they say regarding this whole issue, يجوز الصوم تطوعا بعد النصف من شعبان وضعفوا الحديث الوارد فيه. There is a hadith that says you're not supposed to fast 2 weeks leading up to Ramadan. The last 2 weeks before Ramadan starts, meaning the second half of the month of Sha'ban, you're not supposed to fast. There is a hadith. But the majority of the scholars hold that narration to be weak. And so the majority of the scholars, they say it is permissible. You can do supererogatory fasting leading up to Ramadan in the earlier days, in the month of Sha'ban. That general time of Sha'ban can be done. The prohibition here is simply that day or two leading up to Ramadan. That is the opening hadith, and the next hadith will start the next time, and that is the hadith regarding the moon sighting, the rulings about the moon sighting, and then obviously there's going to be the discussion regarding using the Met Office and the satellite and all those calculations that they have of when the moon's going to come out and not. What's the Islamic ruling of that? And so that is the topic we'll begin with from the next time, insha'Allah ta'ala. So we'll round off on that for today.